Okay, part 4 of the video. We're back here in Mamp in our database PHP MyAdmin, and we're looking at the table players. Now I want to update this table a little bit. We want to put in more information rather than just the first name, last name and nationality of the players. So I want to include the date of birth and maybe the gender of the players as well. So you can see here where I've got add one. I'm going to actually add 2 columns in here, so I'm going to add 2 columns to this table. I'm going to add them after nationality, and I click go. So once I do that, it comes up what are the 2 columns that I want to add. So the first one I'm going to just call DOB, date of birth, and we're going to make that a date. So we go down and put that down as date, and the second one we're going to make gender, and we're going to make that a variable character of 6 lengths. Now the length of 6 is because if someone writes in the word female, 6 characters, so we've got a length of 6 in there. So I'm just going to add those 2. You don't need to put a length in on the date because it automatically does it. I'm just going to add those 2 and click save. And then if I go back to my table players, you can see the players table has updated here with date of birth and this line for gender. So we've got a little bit more information about the players here. And also the other thing I just wanted to check is that you guys had the primary key. In video 1 we set up the primary key for the player ID. You just want to make sure that that one is set to the primary key. Now, as our database grows and the information that we're collecting grows, we don't want to put it all into one table because that's called a flat table and it leads to duplication of data. So we don't want to do that. We actually want to make a couple of extra tables. So we're going to go over here to the left hand side where it says player data. We're going to click new and we're going to create a new table. Now the new table name we're going to call cars. In fact I'll call it cars with a lower case, cars. And we're going to add maybe 5 or 6 columns to this one. Let's start with the 4 that are there and start putting them in, but we can always click another one to add another column. In fact, let's add a few more columns now. Let's make it 10 columns. Okay, so now we've got this new table that's been created here. It's got 10 columns, and we're going to go through and put some information in. Now the first one we're going to put in is player ID. Now what we're going to do is we're going to link a foreign key from our original player ID database here over to this one over here, so that each player's information then links to which car that they own as well. So that's going to be a foreign key. We're not going to change any of the attributes in terms of the auto increment or any of those things because it's not going to be our primary key, it's going to be our foreign key. But we do want to have a primary key, so we're going to call one called cars ID. And we're going to actually make that our primary key. So we'll make it an integer and we'll make it say 20 characters, go across and put auto increment. It'll come up saying do you want it to be a primary key, you click go, yes you do. So that's our primary key for this table. This is going to be our foreign key from the other table. Okay, so now things we need in the car database. We need the type of car, which will be like say an Audi. And then we may want the make, which might be like a Audi R8, and then we might want the model. So the model could be like an Audi R8 Spider. So they're going to be 3 things that we can put in the type of car. We're going to want the nationality. Now the nationality here is the nationality of the car maker, not of the player. We've already got the players on in their birthday. We're going to have a top speed in kilometers per hour. And we might as well have a top speed in miles per hour as well. Let's have the color of the car. And let's have the seats. How many seats the car has. So they're the different columns that we're going to have in our second table, which is our cars table. We need to put in the type. So our player ID is going to be an integer as well, and we're going to have that as 20. We want to keep that consistent with the other table. Our type of car is going to be a variable character. Our make is a variable character. Model, variable character. Nationality, the same. Speed is going to be an integer. Speed in miles per hour is going to be an integer. Color is going to be a variable character, and seats will be a let's put that as a variable character in case someone writes words in rather than writing just a number in. Okay, so let's go down and put in the length of each of these. Let's just go 255 for each of them just to be quick. Obviously no car name is 255 characters long, but It's just quicker to do it this way to start with. Variable character, the color. Okay, so that's our second table set up how we would like it. We've set up the primary key. This is going to be a foreign key. We'll get to that in probably video 5 on how to set that up as a foreign key. We click save, and you'll notice our database on the left hand side is updated. We've got a new table. Now we're going to make another one as well, and this time we're going to look at the career of the players. So we're going to call this table career, and we're going to add, let's make this 8. So we're going to add 4 to here. The 4 that are already there plus the 4 I'm adding here, which makes 8 columns. Now once again we want to pull in the player ID from the first table. We want to have consistent, so it's a length of 20, integer. That'll be a foreign key. In this table we want to have a career ID, which is going to be our primary key. So we go across here and we're going to hit auto increment. Okay. Right, columns are as follows. We're going to have team, which will be the team that they predominantly played for the majority of their career if it's someone retired, or the team that they're currently playing for if they're currently playing. Position, obvious. League, which league they're playing in at the moment. The international games, so whether they've represented their country and how many times they've represented their country. For example, that's like Italy or England or France or whoever they've represented there. Let's put international goals scored. We'll just put GS, and let's put just general goals scored. This is information that people who look up soccer players, this is the sort of thing that they look for, those sort of questions. So we might as well put them in here. Up to 11, up to 11, up to 11. Let's do league, can be variable character 255. Variable character 255. So at this stage you should know how to do this. We've probably done it 3 or 4 times. We've done a few times in class, and you've done it on the video at least 3 times now, so you should know how to do all of this. We hit save, and now we've created 3 tables. Okay, so the first thing that we've done is in our players table here, we've included a date of birth and we've included a gender. But on our web page that we first created, our player web page, we didn't have those inputs. So we want to go through and update those inputs, which I've already done. So if we go here and we look at our players in our brackets document, I've included these extra 4 lines to request which gender that the player may be. So that's one of the things that we added to the document. We've got our first name, we've got our last name, we've got our gender, and we've got our nationality. Now the one I haven't added is date of birth, so we can just do a simple input here, make sure it's after the select, and just put in a please enter your date of birth. Date of birth, and then we've got to do an input. In fact, what we'll do is just copy that one there exactly. Command C, and we'll place that right there. Put an input. Let's change it to DOB. DOB, so that we know that information will now be sent across from this HTML file to our PHP file, where it then goes into the database. Let's go Command S, we'll save that. Let's go to our insert data. Here we've got first name, last name, nationality, gender. So we want to also include date of birth. Let's just copy that one, paste it underneath. Let's call it DOB. Just want to try and stay consistent with your names so that there's no confusion when you go back to the files in 6 months from now and you have no idea what you've done. So we want to insert into first name, last name, nationality, gender, comma, DOB. We called it DOB in the database, so we've got to call it DOB in here, and then we want to include that line in here for our insert, comma, space, put that there, and it's going to be DOB. DOB. Okay, so now we've updated our PHP file as well. So all of the new information, our new player sheet should include gender, nationality, and date of birth. So that's what the client will see when they open their website. This is where it'll input the data into the right columns. We're still only working on our first table. We haven't gone to the second table yet. And remember, this is the section here where once it's successful, it'll take us to B page. So let's just have a quick look at B page. I've included a new line, which is a button here. This line of code here is you open a button, it says type is a button. On click, it takes you to a new window, the location, which is our players.html, and the words that'll come up on the screen is back to the start, because we want to go back and enter more player information. So that's a line of code you need to add to your current line. I'll leave it there for a second so you can see it. Okay, now we're going to go back and we're going to test this file. Make sure you save all of those 3 documents. Go back to here, let's refresh this page, hit players, and you'll see now for our players, let's refresh players as well. Now for our players, we've got first name, last name, gender, nationality, and date of birth. So I'll do myself. Okay, male, Australian, date of birth. Now remember, when we enter the date of birth, we have to do it in the database format. We've talked about this in class. You have to do the year first, then the month, then the day, and you hit submit. Congratulations, you have successfully entered your data, and now we've got this button here that says go back to the start. We click back to the start. Now of course you want to test that works, so we go back to MAMP, click on our players database, and we click browse, and you'll see there's a new entry here. It has Nick May, Australian, 1972, 1010 male. So we've got the new entries worked, the new information we've put in, and it's come into our players database at the correct spot. We'll stop there. In the next video, we're going to work on the website for cars, the website for the career, and we're going to link the foreign key from one database to another database, so you know which player here, player 1 or player 2, has which car and which career they went through.